man in the fire. He never leaves us. No matter the circumstances and what we're up against, he's right there with us in the flames. So the next time I see one of you guys in the hallway or at church, I want to see a number 4. This is ours. I love you guys. Jesus, we're so grateful. We're so grateful for you, the author and perfecter of our faith, the good shepherd, the truth, the redeemer, the living God. We honor you here tonight. We lift your name high, Jesus. Be with us here. In your name, amen. And now, a young man, relatively who we all know and love, Pastor Karl.
Thank you. I'm Steve. So glad to be here with you tonight. You know what we start with each week this summer, right? What do we start with? Series memory verse. Here we go. We read the address, we read the verse, we read the address. You ready? Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. Let's do it again. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold. For he who promised is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. Let's do it one more time. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold unswervingly to the is faithful. Hebrews 10:23. And this is getting close to separating the boys from the men. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. Woo. I like that I heard one person read the address at the end, but it would be much better if we all did that. Because I want you to be able to find this in the Bible. All right? Now, separate the men from the boys. We got any men here? Yeah. Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold unswerving to the hope. For he who promised. At least you got Hebrews 10:23 right. All right. Beautiful, beautiful. Take out your notes there on your table, and we're going to jump right into the next part of our series, Unswerving Hope. How to stand strong no matter what. We're looking at the greatest test every believer faces as revealed to us in the Bible book of Daniel. Daniel's faith and passes several tests. But tonight, the test is not for Daniel. He's not even mentioned in Daniel chapter 3. He's been promoted, and now he is a high officer. So he can be in any part of the empire. But what's about to transpire that we're going to look at tonight is the testing of his 3 best buds. 3 of the Jews who were in that 25% of Israel taken as POWs following King Nebuchadnezzar's obliteration of Jerusalem and defeat of Israel. Question: have you ever been in a situation where you are too angry, too afraid, too agitated to think clearly? Ever been there? Yeah? A moment when the pressure to do something is so great that you feel you cannot resist. And so you go along. You know what we call that feeling? We call that feeling the heat of the moment. And that's what tonight's test is all about. How to stay cool in the heat of the moment. There are a lot of heat of the moment situations in life. And often it seems that in that moment, someone actually steps in and turns up the heat. And sometimes we understand that what we have to learn is what to do when the situation is just too hot to handle. We're in Daniel chapter 3 tonight. Daniel and his 3 best friends are no longer teenagers. Remember, Daniel was 15 when this all started. Now it's 15 years later. They are in their early 30s. The Babylonian emperor, King Neb, I call him, is the most powerful man in the most powerful empire on planet Earth. And it's in this moment that we see what we often see. Success is frequently accompanied by pride, and the greater the success, the greater the pride. So for his whole life, King Neb deals with the issue of pride and arrogance. Pastor Jason's going to get into that part of his story next week. But it is the driving force behind this next test that we're looking at tonight. And guys, listen. You need to know about this. What to do. Because the trigger for this test that you will face probably many times, the trigger is usually pulled by someone else's pride. So let me set things up. Now I encourage you to read all of Daniel 3, but just for time's sake, I'm just going to give you a summary of the first few verses. King Neb's arrogance and pride are on ultimate display. He has a 90-foot tall, 9-foot wide gold statue made probably of himself, though we're not absolutely sure of that. Then he instructs that all citizens and residents are to attend the dedication ceremony. So you get the picture, right? This is King Neb on an ego trip. Everyone is told that when the royal band plays, that they are to do this. Bow to the ground and worship King Neb's statue. And so then the herald states the crucible. Verse 6, anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. So everybody bows. Well, almost everybody. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, take note that though this event happened 2,500 years ago, there are 4 ways that their ways are like our ways. First, there are giant images for me to idolize. Then and today. We may not put up 90-foot gold statues, but do we bow before giant images on the larger-than-life platforms of movie screens, sports stadiums, concert venues, political parties, news media, the internet? Are the people on those stages idolized and worshipped? The world says to us that only the sharpest, the sexiest, the richest, the most powerful, these are the only people that really matter. Fame, wealth, success, pleasure, power, influence, popularity. See, the images we're tempted by are simply our versions of Neb's statue. And people, by the way, I think they still worship gold today, right? Yeah, I think there's a few of them out there. Second, I'm tempted to build fake images of me to amaze me. Did I get that right? Yeah. Fake images of me to amaze you, rather. Every day, we are tempted to build our images and create false impressions for everybody else. For everybody who sees us. Because we want to be loved. We want to be honored. We want to be actually well known. And really, probably secretly, in the little corners of our heart, at times, we would kind of like to be worshipped, at least by a few people. See, image building is always a potential trap, because image building quickly becomes idol making. If there's any word that defines the 21st century so far, it is image. Image consultants snazz up the way you look, the way you sound, the way you act. And character, what you really are, is replaced by image. what you want everybody to think you are. What's the fastest and easiest way that people do that today? Social media, yeah. Social media. It's like, hey, let me show you this picture of my perfect life. And people cut out all of the bad shots and only post the best shots, right? Now, it's good to be the best that you can be, to dress as nice as you can afford. But image building, what we're talking about here, is about faking who you are and trying to be someone you're not. That's not good. Truth is that some people don't have an idol out there that they worship. They idolize themselves. Have you ever met anybody who idolizes themselves? Isn't it good that our wives are not here? Because if they were, we'd have, our side would be sore. Because they'd be saying, he's talking about you, he's talking about you. People who idolize themselves are the people who think the world revolves around them. You adapt to my schedule. You adapt and adjust to my needs. You think about me, don't think about you. Vanity is rife in our culture. So our idols may not be gold, they may be digital, but we put them out there and we call on everyone around us to idolize us. Third, if I refuse the idols of my day, I'll probably get burned. Maybe not in a furnace, but in other ways. If I reject the world's idols, the world's images, when the whole world says, you should worship this, everybody is doing that, everybody loves this, everybody thinks that is great, if you refuse to think it's great, there are people who will burn you. So in Daniel 3, when the band plays and everybody falls down to worship this giant gold idol, but three guys are there standing tall, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, some people got really ticked off. For example, this group. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. They run to King Neb. They remind him of the law that he's passed. And they say, 3 of your hand-picked governors refuse to do what you said everyone must do. And remember what you said will happen if people refuse, King. Well, it's time to fire up the grill. It's 4th of July. That's my air Jimi Hendrix imitation, 4th of July. It's time to fire it up. And they're basically saying, let's roast some kosher dogs. And let's fire off some Jewish candles. Forget Roman candles. And this is when the heat of the moment gets turned up. Why did these co-workers of these 3 men do this? Well, maybe they were anti-Semitic. Maybe it was more personal. They wanted these guys' jobs. Maybe it was just jealousy. Whatever the reason, they want them gone. And they are used by Satan because these 3 honored God, and Satan hates with a passion any person who honors God. And men, in your workplace, there are going to be people who want to burn you when you honor God and you reject the idols of sleazy sex talk, cheating, stealing, loafing, etc. The 4th way our world is like theirs is acting right will be called wrong by some, and they will hate me. If you do the right thing, you do the honest thing, you have integrity, you live for and talk about honor and Jesus, it's going to make some people, it's going to piss some people off. That's what it's going to do. Don't think if I am just perfect, everybody will love me. No, they won't. Jesus was perfect, and what did they do? They nailed him to a tree. And there are people who will want to crucify you, even if you somehow were able to pull it off and be perfect. Now here's what causes the great upset for these three. By their action and by their words, they let the king know, look, you're king, granted. You're the most powerful person on the planet, granted. But you're not God. And we're not bowing down to you and treating you like you are God. That is a line, king, we will never cross. Now, why am I giving you all this background? Because you need to come to grips, guys, with the fact that there are three kinds of people that you will face, that you will work with. There are those who are stuck up. There are those who suck up. And there are those who stand up. Neb is a stuck up. He thinks he's God. The officials suck up. Ooh, they're going, you're so great, king. This statue idea, this is wonderful. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they are stand-up men. When everybody else is bowing, they are standing. Question. What kind of person are you where you live and work? Are you stuck up? People can't talk to you, can't get close to you? Are you a suck-up? You just use flattery to get your way and get around all the problems? Or are you a stand-up man of integrity? You absolutely 100% love everybody, but whether anybody agrees with you or not, you have pledged allegiance to God. And so you say, I'm going to do the right thing. I'll do it humbly. I'll do it politely. I'll do it without bragging. But I'm going to do what God says is right. Is that you? These three guys didn't bow down, though everybody was doing it. Why? Because it called on them to break the first two of the 10 commandments. God says, you shall have no other gods before me. So anything that is number one in your life, man, that isn't God, is your God. So your business, your wife, your girlfriend, I should say, or your girlfriend, because if you have a wife and a girlfriend, that's a whole different problem. We need to talk. Okay. Or is it making money? Or having fun? You know, except for the wife and girlfriend at the same time thing. None of those things are wrong in themselves. They just don't deserve first place in your life. If they are first place, they are an idol, a fake God. The other reason these three don't go along is that God says in the second commandment, you shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything. God warned Israel for years and years about worshiping idols and what it would bring if they did. But they worshiped fake gods for generations. They turned their backs on the one true God who rescued them. And now, as God had warned, their nation is ruined. Jerusalem is sacked. A fourth of the population are now POWs in Babylon. And these three guys know that they are in Babylon because their parents broke these very commands. So they break rank and they say, never. When Neb hears that three of his hand-picked governors refused to bow down, he goes ballistic. Look at this in verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true that you refuse to serve my God or to worship the gold statue I have set up? Then he calms down a little bit and he says, I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I've made. But if you refuse, boys, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And look what he wraps that up with. He says, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power. Do you know what Neb is doing here? He's setting up a God contest. When I throw you into the furnace, he's telling them, who's going to protect you there? We'll see who's God. Everybody's about to see who's God. I'm God. My brothers, the heat is coming to your life. If it hasn't come yet, it's on its way. So when it arrives, what are you going to do? These three men do four things right, and through them we can learn, what do I do when the heat of the moment is too hot to handle? First, forget about self-defense. When your faith in Jesus leads you to take a stand and do the right thing, somebody isn't going to like it. And don't worry. Don't worry about defending yourself. Trust God to take care of your attackers. He's a much better firefighter than you are. So how do you handle this moment? The king gave them one more chance to do what he said. Look at their response. Verse 16. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. Woo! They're saying, we're not worried about what's going to happen. So threats are not a threat. Second, remember to trust in God's delivery power. It does not matter what kind of mess, what kind of crisis, what kind of difficulty, what kind of fire that you're facing right now. Just remember, God has the power to deliver you. So they tell Neb, next verse, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace. Now don't miss this. This is a big deal. They don't know God's plan. They said if we are thrown into the blazing furnace. They don't know God's plans. Will he keep them out of the fire? Will he pour water on the fire? Will he lift them up out of the fire? They don't know. But they do know that if they have to go into the fire, they can trust God. And the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. That's quite a statement of trust. 3. That leads to the third right thing to do that we learn from these boys, these men. Believe that God will rescue me. Believe that God will rescue me. In this moment, you need to know, and you need to believe with all your heart that whatever the problem, whatever the crisis, whatever you're faced with, you not only believe that God has the ability to help you, to rescue you, to deliver you, to save you. You must expect that he's not just able, but that he will, in fact, save you. Look at the rest of the verse. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. These 3 30-somethings, out of the whole nation, these 3 stood up to the king. Everybody else is bowing down every time the royal band plays. Everybody else is conforming to the king's demand to worship him. But these 3 have the courage to say, no, we're not going to do that. And we're not afraid because God can save us. And God will save us. If you're going through the fire right now, guys, you need to get into the Bible. Because there are thousands, literally thousands, 7,000, over 7,000 promises from God to you. If you don't know them, you cannot lean on them. But if you do know them, if you know His promises, then you know what happens? You can lean on them, and your worries evaporate. See, worry is rooted in ignorance of God's promises. Learn God's promises to you. Like, I just pulled one out as an example. If you stand up for God's ways, here's His literal promise to you. Look at this. This is from Isaiah. When you walk through the fire of oppression, that's what we're talking about, you will not be burned up. The flame will not consume you, for I am the Lord your God. That's a promise of God to you if you will stand up and do the right thing. 4, declare my allegiance to God no matter what. Look, we believe God can, and we believe God will save us. That's what they're saying. But, they say, we're not God. We don't know His purpose in this moment. So these 3 men say to the king, we want you to know, even if it's not working. Can you advance this? It's not. There we go. Now I jumped way ahead. I'm sorry. There we go. But even if He doesn't, if God doesn't save us, we want to make it clear to you, Your Majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the golden statue you have set up. So they declare 100% loyalty to God, no matter what. That's what we need to do, man. These 3 young men directly challenge Neb's claim to be God and to demand to be worshipped. So now, his full fury is unleashed on them. Verse 19. Nebuchadnezzar was so furious that his face became distorted with rage. I want you to look at somebody near you and distort your face with rage. Man, some of you are laughing. Okay. So anyway, he distorted his face with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Why 7 times hotter than usual? I mean, it would already fry human beings. So why crank it up? I think he's worried a little bit that God might save them. So turn it up, boys. Verse 20. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. And that's what they did. And the extra heat, 7 times hotter, it cost the lives of the soldiers that were pushing them into the furnace. And these 3, the Bible tells us, fell into a roaring fire, all tied up. So they were tied, thrown into the fire. And what happens next displays the 5 benefits of trusting God when the heat is on. Let's look at these. This is about having faith in what God does when He lets you go through the fiery furnace because of your faithfulness. First, God walks with me through the hottest flames. You won't be alone. God's promise is His presence, no matter what you go through, if you would just trust Him. So what happens in this superheated furnace? Verse 24. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? Yes. Here's the suck-ups. Yes, Your Majesty, we certainly did. They replied, look at this. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted. I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Here's what the king didn't know. It wasn't a son of the gods or an angel. It was the Son of God, Jesus. Jesus walked through the fire with them. And he promises, just as we sang earlier, he promises to walk with you through the hottest flames that you'll ever face. Jesus has said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. The second benefit, if I have faith while in the furnace, is God burns off what's got me bound up. Yes, he walks with me. But notice one more detail in this beautiful verse. The king says, look, I see 4 men unbound walking around in the fire. They're walking around unbound. The ropes have been burned off. The ropes that bound them are no longer binding them. So question for you. What ropes are binding you today? What's holding you back? What's limiting you from being all that the Lord means you to be? What are the limitations in your life that God wants to burn off? God may allow you to go through the fire. If he does, and you're faithful, you're going to come out on the other side unbound and unburned. What will be burned? Just the stuff that's holding you back. The stuff that's got you bound up. This is called the refining fire. Look at what God says in Isaiah 48. I have refined you, but not in the way silver is refined. Rather, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. You may not literally go through a fiery furnace. I hope you don't. But you're going to go through the furnace of suffering many, many times. God is refining you. Impurities are burned off from silver and gold by superheated fire. And all that remains is 100% pure. A silversmith will tell you, it's when you look into the cauldron and you see your reflection in the silver, that's when you know the silver is pure. And God knows that you have been purified when he can see Jesus' reflection in you. You look in your behavior more like Jesus. You reflect his priorities. You demonstrate his love for all people. You follow his instructions to be his witnesses to your family, to your friends, to your co-workers, to your neighbors. God uses the fire of oppression to burn off the stuff that's bound you up, that's held you back from being more of the man that Jesus wants you to be. God wants you to be free. And the path to freedom is truth. The truth of Jesus. And like with Jesus, truth comes at a very high price and a lot of heat. But when you come through it, you're no longer afraid of people's opinions. Disapproval no longer makes you melt. Someone making fun of you because you follow Jesus no longer strikes fear in your heart. Courage replaces cowardice. My prayer for you as I've prepared this week, my prayer for each of you that are part of EMG, is that you would be weaned off of the addiction of the approval of others. You do not need it to be happy, guys. You do not need it to be happy. You only need God's approval to be happy. The third benefit is that God sets me free unharmed. Even before King Neb thought up this crazy statue idea, God already knew what was coming. God wasn't worried. And so, because God wasn't worried, these three guys were not worried either. So they say, looking again at this verse, look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbound walking around in the fire unharmed. Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could. So he's easing up to this furnace door. And he shouted, don't miss, guys, don't miss the next words out of the king's mouth. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. Did you catch it? He said, servants of the Most High God. You know what this is? This is a pagan king making his conversion public. He's like, well, it's obvious that their God is the real deal. My gods are fake, including me. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. And now look what happens. Verse 27. Woo. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them. These are their co-workers that they've been working with, some of the ones that had turned them in. They saw that the fire had not what? Touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed. And their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell the smoke. Have you ever been around somebody who smokes? You ever been around a barbecue pit? You can be there for 10 seconds, and when you walk away, what do you smell like? Smoke. It's hard to not smell like smoke. They're in a fiery furnace, heated up 7 times its normal heat. They come out, they're not scorched, their clothes aren't burned. They don't even smell like smoke. These guys were not just unbreakable, they were unbakeable. They can't be made crooked by the king, and they can't be cooked by the king. And God sets them free, unharmed. 4th benefit, God uses my faithfulness to lead others to Him. When I'm faithful to God, guys, when you're faithful to God, no matter how hot it gets, when you're faithful, no matter how hot it gets, it is a testimony. It is a witness to those who have not yet said yes to Jesus. The degree that you trust God when the degrees of heat and heated oppression are rising, that may be your most powerful witness to those around you. When you're faithful to God and you trust Him in your pain, in your pressure, in the fire, others take note and they start to ask, how are you doing this? So watch what happens. Verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar says, praise be. Woo! Has he changed? Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel. He still doesn't know it's Jesus. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted him. What a grand statement. They trusted in him. They trusted in God. It's the highest compliment. It's the best caption you can ever have for your life. And it's why they exited the flames unharmed. The king then adds this. They defied the king's command. They defied my commands. That's what he's saying. And were willing to die rather than serve or worship any God except their own God. They trusted in him, and the king was saved because of their faith. Question, do you trust in him? Are you willing to live through the heat of the moment, and even when the heat is turned up on you, to be his witnesses? Are you willing to face the death of your image in order to lead someone else to Jesus? Here's a little factoid for you tonight. Some seeds only germinate after fire. For example, our famous giant sequoias are the largest living organism on the planet. They can grow 400 feet tall and live 2,000 years. And yet, the seeds for their birth that are in the cones that only open up when the heat of fire on the forest floor comes. That's when they release their seeds. And then the seeds germinate. It's all because of the heat. And then, guess what? Some of the greatest things that will ever happen to you will only come after you have faced and been through and stayed true. The fire of oppression and stayed true to God. So now the king's got a new decree. The first one, you remember what the first one was? Everybody bow down with me. That was his first decree. The new one is, look at this. Therefore I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. So he's got a way to go. He's got a way to go before he's Christ-like. Okay, he's converted, but he's still dealing with some dictatorial qualities. And by the way, this is not a prescription for how to lead someone to say yes to Jesus. But here's what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He's all in. And nobody is going to diss the true God. And he adds, there is no other God who can rescue like this. Question. Who are you looking to be your rescuer? Who are you looking to be your deliverer? Who are you looking to save you out of the fiery furnace of oppression? No other God can save you completely and eternally except Jesus. There's one more benefit. God rewards my trust in him. He rewards my trust in him. God will reward my faith here and now and in heaven. Look at this, verse 30. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. They passed the test and they are blessed again. But their greatest rewards, and ours, are the eternal ones. And our rewards in heaven, guys, are based on how much we trusted God with the platform that he gave us for our lives. This isn't about your salvation. This is about what you do with your salvation. You see, the Bible says we're all builders of our lives. You build your own life. You can build a good building or you can build a bad building. You can build a strong building or a weak building. A strong life or a weak life. And God gives you permission to do whatever you want with it. In fact, you get to choose the two most fundamental things, the foundation of your life. What am I going to build my life on? And the building materials. What am I going to build with? Paul in the New Testament explains it like this. We must each be careful how we build, because Christ is the only foundation. Whatever we build on Christ, on that foundation, will be tested by fire. So it's coming. You're going to go through the furnace of oppression. And we will be rewarded if our building, our life in Christ, is left standing. So yeah, there are rewards in heaven. But if it is destroyed by the fire, we will lose our rewards. Yet we ourselves will be saved like someone escaping from flames. He's not talking about your salvation. Once you are saved by Jesus, you are eternally saved. You can't be unsaved. Once you are born again into God's family, you can't be unborn again. But you can lose your rewards. So like I said, the basis of your rewards is trusting God in the furnace. It's caring more about what God says than what everybody else says or does. So final questions. What are you feeling the heat of oppression? Where are you feeling the heat of oppression today? Pressure to conform and worship false images and idols of our culture? Where are you feeling the heat? Whatever that place is, learn to do what these three men did. Trust in God, no matter what. So what does God want you to do? Want to do in you and through you? Is what he's revealed to you tonight. Think about that. Now it's time for us to go to our table talk questions. Enjoy. We'll come back and we'll go.